Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. We're starting off this week with a premium that I missed. This is a German destroyer, a German premium destroyer, a premium German tier 10 destroyer, the Z42. So, what has Wargaming cooked up here? German destroyers are a mess to begin with. In reality, already, because of some relatively weird ideas that the Germans had, about putting cruiser caliber guns on destroyers, which was not particularly effective. And in the game, even more so, because some of the historically existing German destroyers that had cruiser caliber guns have been retrofitted to carry the 128mm guns that they never had to enable the Elbing line, which never existed, to carry the 152s. So, yeah, here we are. So, this is the newest member in this slightly chaotic family, the Z42. The Z42, to nobody's great surprise, did not exist. Well, the Z42 was planned. She was one of the planned ships of the 1936B design. The 1936B design was the Germans realizing, after the 1936A design, that sticking 150mm guns on destroyers makes them mildly top-heavy and not particularly good, and reverting back to something slightly more sensible caliber-wise, and going to the 128mm guns, which means, of course, that we are not going to see 128mm guns on these ships. So, yeah, not happening. The ship itself didn't exist. She wasn't laid down. Some of them were laid down, all of them were destroyed. This one is an imaginary variant of that. So if we're looking at the description, it says that it is a variant of the 1936B type that has 105mm dual-purpose guns. Okay then, how did they get to that idea? Let's have a brief look at the actual description of the gun. This is a 105mm 65 caliber length of the Konstruktionsjahr 33, so designed in 1933. And 65 calibers in length, 105mm in caliber. So, what is that doing on a destroyer? Well, there was actually a destroyer that historically had these guns on it, and that was the Attilio Regolo. After she was handed over to the French, the Italian destroyer, after being handed over to the French after the Italian capitulation in, I think, 1948-ish. She was then refitted with the Italian guns were removed, and she was refitted with German 105mm guns. These guns were originally anti-aircraft guns, and these were the anti-aircraft guns you'd find on things like the Scharnhorst. So they did end up on a destroyer, but there were only 6 of them. This has a few more. So let's go through and see how she compares to her peers. Well, first of all, let's take a look how she compares to the Z52. And you'd be forgiven to forget that just because these numbers are mildly close, this doesn't mean that these ships in any way are related. So the first thing we notice is that she gets an extra engine boost, but it's only an engine boost 1. So this one gives us 8% speed, whereas the Z52 gets 12% speed. She does get sonar, but one charge less, but she gets 5 smoke screens. This is and I have made a video recently about smoke screens, just in case you're utterly confused about these by now. This is the short burst smoke generator, or in more understandable terms, the smoke screen 0. It's the Druid's smoke screen. So you get a very small and very short lasting smoke screen, but it's a regular smoke screen. It's not a fuel smoke. In return, you get a quick cooldown, and you get 5 charges of them. Whereas the Z52 has 2 regular smoke screens and can fit some unique equipment on her. Hull-wise, they are reasonably similar. The 52 gets a little bit more in terms of hit points, but other than that, they're quite similar. The Z42 is quite slow, with just under 36 knots. She's not the fastest ship out there, but other than that, is pretty comparable again to the Z52. The guns is where it gets funky. So these are 105mm AA guns that we're seeing here in a dual purpose role, which they were technically capable of. So we have a bit slower reload than on 128s. That is quite interesting given the lower caliber. We have obviously a shorter range, and she does overall less damage and everything, and the turret traverse speed with 12 degrees is pretty darn slow as well. But we have 5 twin turrets, 2 super firing forward and 3 in the rear. She also gets torpedoes, which for all intents and purposes are completely worse than the Z52's torpedoes. And I'm not sure I see why that would be. But maybe the idea is that the Z52 was a later model and gets slightly better torpedoes, I guess. Can't really take it out of the description, but we've got the same reload, we've got slightly less damage, we've got the same range, we've got slightly less speed. For all intents and purposes, they're similar, but slightly worse than on the Z52. Now comes the interesting part. So this is a ship, just to remind you of that, this is a ship that has 10 105mm AA guns. Her AA is actually worse than the Z52's, in my opinion, because you get a shorter range on both, and while you do a bit more damage on the large caliber, you actually do less damage on the small calibers. And I think all in all, I mean, none of this matters, right? It's not that the Z52 has good AA. It's a German destroyer. It doesn't have any useful AA to start with, right? She can't defend herself against aircraft. Neither can this thing. The difference being the Z52 never claimed to, whereas this one should have, by all intents and purposes, somewhat better AA. Concealment-wise, she is actually worse off than the Z52 as well. So let's compare her to another ship that has a lot of low-caliber AA guns, the Harugumo, which is a derivative of the Akizuki sort of class of ships that were meant as carrier escorts and had therefore lots of rapid-firing AA guns. So if we're looking at the guns, not the Z52, this one, there we go, wrong Z. If we're looking at the guns, the Harugumo gets the 100mm, but the Harugumo has faster reload, better range, and a higher fire chance, but in return it is do significantly less damage on the armor piercing. In terms of AA, the Harugumo's AA is actually not terrible for a destroyer, significantly better than what the Z52 is bringing along, and obviously the Harugumo since recently now also gets a defensive AA. So what does that leave us with? It leaves us with an interesting ship. And interesting in the way that, well, first of all, she doesn't quite... At first, I didn't quite know what to do with this ship. Now, traditionally, on a German destroyer, you would say, well, armor-piercing guns, and you're good to go. The problem is these are 105 mils, and while the armor-piercing damage isn't bad, she does 424 base damage on the AP. That's not terrible for her 105mm caliber. The penetration is just not high enough. So even against weak spots, even against things like 30mm bow plating on a battleship, she's going to struggle with the armor piercing until you switch you put in the APCS skill. Even against destroyers, she will struggle with the armor piercing and basically do mostly semi-pens until you put in the APCS skill. This is a ship that completely switches around with that level 11 skill, in my opinion. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. For now, well, you've got lots of guns, you've got a decently fast reload, you've got some rapidly reloading torpedoes, and you've got a lot of smoke screens. So I was thinking, oh well, so it's kind of like a Japanese gunboat destroyer playstyle, where you get yourself into interesting positions and then start unloading. Unfortunately, 2% fire chance is not particularly good. But let's see. Let's see first how I've set her up, and then we go and see her actually in action. You get the choice between reloading your torpedo tubes faster or reloading your guns faster. I would go with the guns because the 4.2 second base reload is on the low end for her tier, and with 10 guns it feels like a gunboat destroyer. But don't discount the torpedoes; they're quite necessary to actually do any damage on this thing. you can fit the historical camo onto it, which gives you a range on the main batteries and range on the torpedoes, and traverse speed surface detection. You can get the Iron Cross camo in, which is a very pretty camo, I'm gonna have to say, for an alternate. And it gives you hit points instead of torpedo range. I think that's the only difference. Yeah. So you get 4 hit points instead of the torpedo range. To be honest, I think both are good. So whatever you've got laying around, I think either of them works out reasonably well. You get the necessary surface detection for a destroyer, and you get the main battery range, which is quite essential for this ship. So, equipment. You could be very tempted to put in the main battery mod 1, but I think some of these turrets might actually be 360. I'm not entirely certain, I haven't actually checked. But I think okay, here you can sort of see it, maybe not 360, but the turret here in the middle, how we call it, the first of the last 3 in front of that little superstructure with the AA gun is actually pointing forward, whereas the other 2 are rearward superfiring. So that turret is actually going to be on target at an angle reasonably quickly, and is going to be reasonably quick to switch around. So even if it might not be 360, because I doubt that it can actually turn around all the way, it is pointing forward, which means it's going to swing around the other side quite quickly. So the turret traverse is actually not as much of an issue as it initially feels like. Also because mostly you are going to be, well, sitting behind an island and unloading things. But that's why I've picked the main battery mod 2 to get a faster reload. And then otherwise it's the normal stuff. It's propulsion, and obviously you do want concealment on this thing. Now be aware that she is relatively slow, but with everything in, we have a 4.37 second turn time, and we've got an under 4 second reload for the 105 mils. And I think for me that's the right direction to go, due to the gun layout, and a range of 9.6 kilometers. And the concealment's down to 5.8, which isn't grand, but it's workable. Now, I have played, again, 2 battles, one with a regular captain and one with a legendary captain. And the legendary captain I've picked for today is von Spee, because von Spee has a couple of very useful abilities that are quite good here. Otherwise, the setup is relatively similar. On a regular captain, I would have to be picking the battlefield support for an extra sonar. Here I'm using the torpedo alert just because it's a legendary skill, but you could also just ignore it and go with the battlefield support. He's got the preheating plus, which gives us plus 4% speed and almost plus 50% acceleration for almost a minute into the battle, which is quite nice. The Daredevil, which means once we reach less than half our hit points, our ship becomes quite a bit more maneuverable. Very importantly, the Sixth Sense skill, which tells you if you're being targeted, which is very, very useful as well, because you know when to use your smoke screen. Or in other words, you can be a little bit more conservative with your smoke screen, which leads us to the Mistweaver Plus, which increases the duration, but much more importantly, reduces the cooldown. Because this is a smoke generator 0, but you've got 5 charges on it. So with that, you can use it again very, very quickly. Engine boost, obviously, and the other very important thing that we want to look at is the APCS Plus, because that gives us just enough penetration for the armor piercing to be an absolute menace against enemy destroyers and super light cruisers or scout cruisers. So if you're facing things like the Pan-Asian cruiser line, these sort of ships, the armor piercing with APCS Plus can absolutely ruin their day. Whereas without that skill, you're oftentimes, unless you're point blank, struggling to even do significant damage to destroyers. But with this skill, it flips around quite a bit. I still probably would be firing high explosive at battleships, especially at range, because it's just not quite as effective as it normally should be. And you're spitting out so many shells that even with a 2% fire chance, you get the occasional fire set. And then Giant Hunter is the obvious choice here at tier 12. So you get 2 battles, one of them with a regular 10-point captain and one with von Spee here, and with the premium consumables. Let's go. The first round is domination on blue front, and we are facing Monty, Prinz Ruprecht, Minotaur Takahashi, Shimakaze and Yugumo. Now, Shimakaze and Yugumo, I don't really have a big problem with. Minotaur and Takahashi, obviously, are much, much bigger issues. These things can be quite vicious, lots of torpedoes, lots of 150 mils, and not much fun. So, but it's a 4-cup domination map, so I'm the only destroyer on the team, which means I am going to go and deal with capture circles as my primary objective. Now, I am going to switch the guns to the armor piercing once, because there are 2 destroyers out there, and these are 2 destroyers that I am going to take on in a gunfight, especially if I can get close enough that that I can actually make something happen. So it's like, I'd say 7 kilometers and under is, without the APCS plus, is where these 105 mils are effective against destroyers. They still have, they still pack a punch for their caliber. Against anything larger than that, you're probably going to want to switch to the high explosive. So, unsurprisingly, enemy team starts taking B-Cup, and I am going to drop some prospective torpedoes in here, because I've got a 48-second torpedo reload, which means by the time I'm actually going to spot anything, I might land a torpedo hit or 2. And the enemy Minotaur has been spotted, so that gives our battleships something to shoot at. And I can make my way over into D-Cup. So far, haven't really seen anything from these 2 Japanese destroyers, but we'll find out. Nah, never mind. There is the Shimakaze. Hello, Mr. Shimakaze. At this range, look at what happens. Yeah. Okay, now I'm gonna have to slow down, and there's also a Minotaur, and there's the Takahashi. So I'm gonna have to instantly smoke up. Unfortunately, I'm still detected in smoke because there's a bot Isomo which negates my smoke. Wargaming, if you wouldn't mind fixing that nonsense, because it really hurts players. Okay, I'm gonna have to dodge Shima torpedoes and Takahashi torpedoes, but now I'm behind an island, which means I'm undetected, which is kind of the favorite position that you want to be in. And the Shimakaze has decided that he doesn't want to play with me, which is understandable. Takahashi is still shooting at me, but you see the armor piercing at this range is ineffective. So, but we have now taken 2 capture circles, and I'm going to try and take a B-Cup off them if I can. Because now I've got flanking shots into Yugumo, which has gotten himself spotted, and is now going to die very quickly. At the same time, I do have to be somewhat careful about these guys up ahead of me, so I'm going to smoke up. But Takahashi gets I was a little late. Takahashi gets a nasty shot in with a triple insta-fire. Yeah, it's fun with these things. Now, these 2 cruisers I'm never going to hit with torpedoes, but I'm just dunking the torpedoes in a general direction, and I'm hoping to get my concealment down before my smoke expires. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit too late, which means I'm now giving full broadside to a Minotaur and a Takahashi. Oh, that's gonna hurt. Fortunately, just 1 insta-fire from the Takahashi, and which I cannot obviously damage control, so that's gonna burn. But yes, there are also torpedoes coming, and I'm gonna get myself between this island here and then try to get myself not spotted. Fortunately, my smoke screen is already off cooldown again, which means I can use it if I need to. But right now I'm just gonna sneak into B-Cup, take it off them, and keep sending area denial torpedoes in the general direction of these 2 enemy cruisers, just to keep them away from everyone, while we are going to start unloading at the Montana. So smoke up. Montana is going to detach himself from that island, so I'm just going to go and try to set some fires. Yep, that's 1 fire. He damacons. Now, he is on low hit points, so that is understandable. And it's a Monty. But sonar up in case there are any torpedoes, and I do need to get out of here because that's the Takahashi again. So heal up and run. But I have managed to land a torpedo on the Minotaur, and I think it was the Minotaur, and it's flooding. The Takahashi was turning around, but the Minotaur might have caught the tail end of one of my torpedoes. So we've got 1 permafire going, and we flooded the Minotaur, which is nice. But now we're running head first into a Prinz Ruprecht. So there are 2 possible outcomes to this, because the Takahashi is giving chase, and my team seems seemingly uninterested. So I'm smoking up. If the Prinz Ruprecht has radar and has sonar ready, I'm dead. And he has sonar ready. Yeah. So Takahashi is going to kill me, but I can still get some I can still get some torpedoes away at the Prinz Ruprecht before I die, and maybe try to set a fire or two. Takahashi is going to take me out, or the Ruprecht, yeah, Takahashi double insta fire and just takes me out there. These things are absolutely vicious, and yeah, if Ruprecht didn't have sonar ready, I could have smoked, kept going, and probably avoided being hit by the Takahashi. But as it stands, I think we've done enough. We've taken 3 of the capture circles, or supported taking 3 of the capture circles, and done enough damage to the Prinz Ruprecht that my team should be able to take this one out. So I think as a destroyer, we've done our duty. Now, while we're watching the rest of this battle play out, well played, Takahashi, by the way. I really don't know what my team's doing all the way over there at the other side of the map, but oh well, such is life. The 105s are really, really good for their caliber against destroyers with the armor piercing at close range, unless you have the APCS plus, at which point you can do something even against cruisers. Against other ships, anything larger than a destroyer, you're really going to have to position smartly, and that's kind of where the smoke screens are coming in. Just be aware that these things are not lasting very long, and you're going to need to, so they're not smoke up, sit in it and unload, right? You basically got a couple of seconds inside your smoke screen where you can do that, and then you need to start getting moving again, because the ship isn't the most maneuverable and the smoke screen expire very quickly, which means that you'll be caught with your pants down, figuratively. Better positioning is behind islands, where you're just unspotted, and try to get the shells over on target. They have reasonably flat arcs, and you can get them on target quite a lot. And even though the fire chance is very low compared to ships like the Harugumo or to Soviet destroyers, it's the sheer volume of fire, really, that makes the difference here. And the positioning behind islands allows you to sort of exploit this. That said, still, these are not ships that are... this is not a ship that uses it's going to cause an astonishing amount of damage easily, but it's a very useful ship against, let's say, against enemy destroyers, because of the sheer number of guns and the armor-piercing amount of firepower that you can put out. All right, I think my team has managed not to lose the battle, and we're still actually coming out on top of this whole ordeal, with only 60,000 points of damage done, which isn't an amazing amount. You do need to get lucky with the torpedoes, or you do need to play a little bit more, on the farming side if you want to bump that number up sufficiently. But it'll be a waste, because these ships are really, really good at contesting caps, dealing with enemy destroyers, especially at close range and these sort of things. So, let's take it into a second game, and this time we're playing base capture on Hourglass, and we are up against Schlieffen, Monty, Ohio, double Smolensk, and double Shimakaze. Welcome to the Asian server. That's gonna be fun. Well, see, the thing is, you're in a Z42, you're not afraid of Shimas, and while Smolensk is nasty, I can, to a degree at least, hurt Smolensk right back, and I'm gonna outspot that thing, so I know she's gonna come, so... There we go. Let us switch to the armor piercing. And as you can see, this one is with the APCS Plus skills, so I can use the armor piercing a bit more against things like cruisers. And I am totally going to head over the right flank, but I am the destroyer on this flank, so I will be going spotting because there is no carrier. Just because you have a ship full of AA guns doesn't mean you can do anything. You can stand up against carriers in this thing. You can very much not. She's got terrible AA, so don't even try. But you've got plenty of smoke screens, so if you can get yourself smoked up before the carrier spots you, you have a chance of surviving initial carrier strikes. Now I'm taking the slightly riskier route here, but that's because so the risk here is if one of the Shimas goes middle, like where I am, coming down right there, Shima's gonna outspot me. And if one of the Smolensk is in firing range, I'm in all kinds of problems. But I have 5 smoke screens and I've got a sonar, so it shouldn't be too bad. So I'm contemplating sending some prospective torpedoes out that direction, but I think the chance is very low. And we have found ourselves a Smolensk. So I'm going to get that island between myself and Smolensk and then start unloading with the armor piercing. But because I am going to be spotted from the other direction, I'm going to start smoking up. But as you can see, you are very much full penetrating a Smolensk's belt armor with the 105mm AP at under 5km range. And everybody goes, Smolensk! And that thing has died in such a short period of time that it's just like he didn't even know what happened to him. Way too aggressive also for Smolensk, especially knowing that there are 2 destroyers out there who can outspot you. So Monty, next target. Let us begin unloading the high explosive at the Montana, because that Montana has literally just run out of friends. And I'm pushing tentatively forward towards the capture circle. I don't still know where the rest of the team is lurking. And there's one of the cruisers there behind the island on my left. So I just want to get myself behind this island and break line of sight with the Monty to see if... I've got the Monty targeting me now. So I'm just going to dive under that salvo. Yep, that worked out. And I should be going undetected any second now. Yep, there we go. And I'm undetected. Okay, so I'm just going to stop behind the island. Get myself into torpedo range. I am going to smoke up just in case, because Montana, I do need to poke out a little bit, and I don't want to be blapped in the side in case Montana has paid attention and loaded the high explosive. But now I'm going to back up. Yeah, he's blind firing me at this point, so he did not actually end up spotting me. I'm not sure if that was necessary, but you can be quite liberal with your smoke screens in this ship. So Montana probably should have known that torpedoes are coming. There's Ohio over there. And I'm keeping a wary eye at that cruiser. But now we've got another fire set and we're flooding. And because Monty Damaconed a single fire earlier, that is a very, very dead Montana. So we can probably start orienting ourselves into a different direction. And very much keeping that island between myself and that Smolensk over there. Smolensk! Oh yeah, he just got blapped in the side. Back to the armor piercing against Smolensk. Oh, never mind, he's already dead. Okay, back to the high explosive. And it looks like we're having a bit of a lemming train situation here. So engine boost up. We need to kill that Ohio and get into the enemy capture circle, because both Shimakazes and one of the battleships comes down the other flank. Our friendly destroyer, who's sitting in the friendly capture circle, is going to die. Everybody else has just run away. Yep, there goes the gearing. Oh, it's a Schlieffen. Schlieffen double Shima. Okay, Ohio is dead. Yeah, we're not going to be able to defend, not against double Shima over there. But I'm just going to counter cap, and we're 2 kills ahead. So that should hopefully seal the deal. And but we might lose 1 or 2 of our battleships back there, especially if the Shimakazes are coming after them. So... Team suggests to cap the enemy base, and I think that's the right course of action here. So we're capping at the same time, and that means we're just going to base trade. But because we are 2 kills ahead, we should be having this on points. One of our battleships is turning around, so he's going to die. If there's a lemming train going on, I mean, we're ahead on points. You don't need to contest this, right? Just stick together. In this case, we're base trading. We're ahead on points and base trading. If we were below on points or behind on points and trying to base trade, that'd be a different story. But you really don't need to commit suicide by Shimakaze back there. We're still 1 more ship ahead. So, and we've got we can lose 1 battleship, and I think the rest of the team has gotten the memo and is coming along. So we're just gonna go and cap everything. And then once we've base traded, given that I have an idea how teams work, I'm gonna head over back to our original cap, and go and scout, because I'm pretty sure my team's gonna try and win harder. So we go for the high explosive for now, in case I can spot that Schlieffen somewhere, because a friendly battleship, to my great surprise, is still alive against Schlieffen and double Shima. He should have been dead by all means. I don't know what that is over there that we've got, what battleship that is, but we can afford to lose that one, but maybe not another one. Although they have 1 battleship, 2 destroyers, we should still be okay on points, even if we lose 2 battleships. Okay, Yamato is dead. Schlieffen taken him out, to nobody's great surprise. We're still leading by a comfortable 90 points. So a double Shima and Schlieffen over there. We don't need to. We're already winning. You don't need to win any harder. Stop being difficult. Okay, there are going to be so many torpedoes coming through this gap because I'm sure that the Nevsky behind me is spotted. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop torpedoes in this through this gap here towards the capture circle, and then there's the Schlieffen. So let's just go and drop some torpedoes on the Schlieffen in case he keeps reversing, and then we're just going to smoke up and wait for the inevitable. And I'm trying, and with the APCS Plus, let's get the sonar up and see the torpedoes coming, just for the benefit of the friendly team. With the APCS Plus, you can actually start targeting things like stern sections quite successfully. And I think Schlieffen is dead. Concentration of firepower, and the Shimas are nowhere to be seen. I think these are Schlieffen torps given by the glacial speed that they're running here. So there we go. And that is the Z42. A surprisingly fun destroyer. It's kind of a crossbreed between... it's kind of like a German Harugumo. And while I was initially kind of put off a little bit by the performance of the guns, especially if you can get an APCS captain in there, and you can actually start targeting battleship bow stern sections at range, this becomes an absolute menace with these guns. The torpedoes are not terrible. They're not quite as good as on a Z52, but they're still very much usable. And you've got these five Druid-style smoke screens that you can use, plus the sonar, which makes this all over a very, very fun ship. It's a great little capture. It's a great little ships to contest capture circles against enemy destroyers and to strike fear in the hearts of your enemies, because these guns take no prisoners at all. And as such, it is actually a really fun ship, especially if you get an 11-point captain in there with the APCS skill. On these guns, it makes the difference between having to HE spam anything but destroyers and being able to do more standard German style bow stern assaults with the AP and really racking up the damage. And that's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.